Test, test.
Good evening, everyone.
Historic Preservation Commission meeting, September 19th, 2022. It's just a couple of minutes after 6. In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided. If any member has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of that act, they should state so at this time. Pledge of allegiance, please. Pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Coxwell?
Here.
Ms. Bisagno is absent. Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Here.
Mr. Testa?
Here.
Mr. Stevenson?
Here.
Mr. Becker?
Here.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Before we begin this evening and with the minutes and resolutions and all, I would like to read a brief statement. I'd like to open this meeting this evening by taking a moment to acknowledge a passing of a former HPC member and dear friend, Dave Clemens. Dave was a man, as you know, of many talents, an artist, a musician, chef, poet, writer, and a family man. Also, and importantly, he was a lifelong preservationist and believed very strongly in the importance of preservation and was a key member of this august group for about 15 years. So I think it's fitting to remember his contribution. He'll be missed, and I just wanted to take a moment and recognize Dave's contribution and his passing. So, thank you.
Thank you.
With that, minutes, August 15th, 2022, you've had a chance to review those. Do I have a motion to accept them?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Coxwell, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Coxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Abstain.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Abstain.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolutions, Wenzel, 105 Queen Street, 1096/1, Resolution 2022-39, 1121 New York Avenue, 1117/25, 2627, Resolution 2022-40, Francisci, sorry about that, 514 Elmira Street as 1054/11, Resolution 2022/41, 921 Beach Avenue LLC, 1081/19, Resolution 2022-42, and finally Moore, 106 New Jersey Avenue, 1115/4, Resolution 2022-43. Do I have a motion to accept?
Move adoption of all the resolutions.
Do I have a second?
Second?
And by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Stevenson. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Coxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Abstain.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson? Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you.
Applications approved in review. You've had a chance to look at those. Do I have a motion to accept those?
Second?
Motion by Mr. Coxwell, seconded by Mr. Carroll. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Coxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson-Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Becker?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you.
First order of business, Walsh, 1022 New York Avenue, Block 1102, Lot 10. This is a contributing property, garage roof.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be recusing myself from the hearing of this application.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Tim Walsh. I reside at 1022 New York Avenue, which is a Dutch colonial revival built in 1925. I reside there with my wife and my 96-year-old father-in-law. We were retired and have lived in Cape May full-time since August 2009. Prior to that, we owned a weekend home on Windsor Avenue, which we purchased in 1997. We take great pride in our beautiful property, our home, and have an extensive award-winning garden, gazebo, and a small pond. The reason I'm here tonight is in reference to my garage roof. My roof has two skylights on the east-facing side of the roof, and the flashings surrounding these skylights have both failed, causing water leakage. The shingles on my roof are not actually in need of replacement at this time, but it appears that in order to be able to repair the flashing, shingles must be replaced. My garage presently has 3 layers of roofing: an initial layer of cedar shingles, 2 layers of asphalt shingles covering the cedar. These skylights are above 2 showers that are in the garage. They were installed in 2000, and the roof on both my home and garage were installed in 2004 by a previous owner. I would like to take note at this time that the garage roof is not visible from my street. If you see the pictures I included, 1, 2, and 3. Picture 1 is from the west corner of the property from the sidewalk. Picture 2 is from the east corner of the property from the sidewalk. And picture 3 is from the center of the property from the sidewalk. In the spring of this year, I contacted Dave Adams Roofing, who came out to my home and presented me with 4 options. Option 1 was to replace the roof on east-facing side only using asphalt shingles. Option 2 was to replace the entire roof using asphalt shingles. Option 3 was to replace the 2 layers of asphalt shingles, leaving the cedar shingles and adding a new layer of asphalt shingles to the entire roof. Option 4, remove the 2 layers of asphalt shingles, leaving the cedar shingles and adding a new layer of asphalt shingles to the east side of the roof, only where the skylights are. I chose option 2 because I thought it would be the proper way to address the situation. However, I would be happy to do any of these options, as both sides of the roof cannot be viewed at once. There are a few reasons why I would like to explain specific situations on my property. These involve safety issues, past exceptions made in my neighborhood, and exorbitant price increases in roofing materials. My electric service comes into my property from the rear. The utility pole is literally 16 inches from the corner of my garage, if you'll see picture 4. The service line runs from the pole to my home, crossing over my garage roof. The main power line runs along the entire width of my garage. That's pictures 5A, B, and C. There have been several serious incidents of arcing from this power line, one resulting in an actual fire to my neighbor's shared garage directly behind my home. At my property, arcing at the pole caused a power outage and an emergency replacement of the line to my house in the middle of the night a few years back. I've included in my packet a copy of the guidelines from Atlantic City Electric Service Handbook, which indicates, if you see the document, and I quote, "In all cases, the service entrance should conform to the National Electric Code and National Electric Safety Code. The point of service must be located to avoid cables crossing swimming pools, buildings, or other obstructions." So as I'm certain you can understand, this too causes great concern with regard to a wood roof. The danger of wood roof catching fire is far greater than an asphalt roof. I've had the power company come out to my home with concerns of arcing 4 times since 2009. The last being April 14, 2020. This is the day of the storm. Hit Cape May. It was so severe that the pillar at Congress Hall came down. I've asked the electric company to move the pole or possibly place this line underground, and they've refused to do both. Presently, the identical sister house to mine, 3 doors away at 1030 New York, is undergoing major renovations, which include a new roof on both the house and the garage. Both are being done in asphalt shingles. This homeowner has been allowed to add an additional dormer, which can be seen from our street, picture 6. Again, my garage roof cannot be viewed from the street. Since I moved here, the home directly next door to me, the historically significant stick-style home at 1012 New York, was permitted to replace a cedar roof with an asphalt roof. The entire roof can be viewed from our street. The garage at this property is also asphalt. These are pictures 7, 8, and 9. After Dave Adams Roofing submitted a request for a permit to do this job and it was denied, I requested an estimate for the price of a cedar roof. The cedar roof price is $18,500. That estimate is document 2. The price for an asphalt roof is $6,500. Cedar roof price is almost three times the asphalt roof. This is cost prohibitive for me and my family. I do not think the historic significance of my property would be adversely affected by an exception. As it stands now, the roof on both my home and garage match and have for decades. If the garage is roofed in cedar, it will no longer match my home. My home will probably never be roofed in cedar, as all pre-existing cedar was removed and plywood was installed before I purchased this home. Taking all this into consideration, the exorbitant price of cedar due to the supply chain issues created by the COVID pandemic, the safety concerns of a wood roof directly under a problematic power line, recent exceptions made for 2 of my immediate neighbors, and the fact that my garage roof is not visible from my street creates a feeling of hopefulness that you might grant another exception for my situation as you did recently for neighbors. If I may, I would like to add, just this past weekend, my daughter Blair Walsh visited us here in Cape May from New York City. Blair holds a graduate degree in architectural historic preservation from Columbia University. She's Director of Preservation Services at the Landmarks Conservancy. We discussed my felled skylights at great length, and if I may, I would like to share some of what we discussed. I would like to propose that I be allowed to remove the 2 layers of asbestos shingles, leave the original cedar shingles, which would retain the historic fabric, add a layer of substrate, marine grade plywood, and then add 1 layer of architectural shingles. In closing, I would like to reiterate, when this commission initially denied my request to remedy my roof leak with asphalt shingles, I was prepared to pay more for a cedar roof and comply with the HPC's wishes, but the estimate came in 3 times higher than asphalt shingles. The price of materials has rapidly escalated in an unprecedented market due to global supply chain issues and inflation. The price of lumber has been a well-publicized example of these extremes. Unfortunately, in the condition my flashing dictates that I cannot wait for pricing to stabilize and then proceed with this work. I would like to make a case for appropriateness of asphalt shingles in this situation. Again, my garage is minimally visible secondary structure 110 feet from the sidewalk. I'll use a high-grade architectural shingle that will imitate the appearance of cedar shingles. I do not think the difference from the original material will be apparent to passerbys. I'm sincerely concerned with the risk of fire at my garage due to numerous electrical incidents and the failure of the Atlantic City Electric to reduce this risk. Introducing a more flammable material than I currently have on my garage seems unwise, as it would endanger the entire structure's existence. My preference would be to have a roof that isn't the original material than to risk not having the structure at all. In light of the electrical fire at my neighbor's garage, I hope you understand it as a legitimate concern for me. My wife and I view ourselves as the temporary stewards of our home, and we value living in a historic district. I would not be requesting the change if I thought I would be detrimental to the streetscape or the historic character of our neighborhood. Thank you for giving me consideration to my request.
Thank
I
you.
can answer any questions.
Before we go around the room, the challenge here, as you might suspect, as you know, is the standards. Cape May City Historic Preservation Standards are quite clear. Several comments are made on page 54 about if there's evidence of material, the material should be replaced in kind. If the materials is not available, but can be determined appropriate from the age of the building. In this instance, we don't have to do that. As I recall, there's about 5 different instances of very specific standard and comment. Also, the standards recommend clearly to use a fire retardant cedar, which in fact is probably more fire resistant than an asphalt fiberglass. Having said that, I understand your issues and your questions and your concerns, and we'll go around the room. But the issue, we do have an issue with standards, which are part of the ordinance, and we have limited flexibility. Having said that, we'll go around the room.
If I may just, the cost prohibitive, on paragraph 6, it says if original is no longer available and the cost is prohibitive, an alternate material can be used. So your standards do use cost as one of the criteria for allowing an alternate.
That's written, as you know, in the context of a product that is no longer available. This product is available. The Secretary of Interior, in fact, is silent on the expense, with the exception of if you have to go out and recreate
understand.
something that
Yep.
no longer exists. That's what that reference is. But let's go around the room and see where we are. Jake?
You know, listening to the story, I think it would really be more of an issue if the main structure had cedar shake and, the garage didn't, and there would be a conflict there. With regards to the roof already being done on the main structure, it doesn't really have to match that. I'm kind of torn on it, but then again, there are the standards, and trying to get a balance there.
If I might say one other thing, the power company doesn't take care of the power lines in the rear of the homes with as much vigor as they do along the streets. Everybody notices the Aspen trucks running up and down the street, cutting the trees. They never maintain those lines behind any of the houses that are coming from the back unless there's a problem and unless it's a serious problem. The reason that I'm assuming is that they can't get equipment back there. In order to get equipment back there, when I asked them if they would consider moving the pole, they said, no, them moving the pole would probably create a problem for another neighbor. Plus, they can't get equipment back there easily. They would have to go into a whole rigmarole to get trucks back there. Putting a power line underground, they have complete control of where your power comes to and from. They would not run it from that pole. They said they might consider it running from a pole on New York Avenue, but that would require, the poles are on the other side of the street. That would require them breaking the street to come across, and that would be, all at my expense. So it's just almost out of, not even thinking about it.
Well, as I mentioned, and when you do research, the fire retardant cedar shingle compares as well or better than an asphalt fiberglass. I don't think fire is the issue. And we'll hear, the question is what you can see from the street and what the house is sheet, but I don't think fire is the issue. Janice?
Actually, I would be afraid of fire when I'm looking at this. John, is it okay for me to ask John for a read on the relative fire worthiness of
So-
cedar versus asphalt?
From my experience, Warren is correct, that if it is a pressure-treated, fire-retardant wood shingle, it is equal, if not more restrictive to fire than an asphalt shingle. And the reason why is because the thickness of the shingle is so small that the heat can penetrate it much more quickly and get to the substrate, which therefore catches fire. So it's a heat issue as opposed to a flammability issue.
Okay, so I wondered, because I know the old saw about vinyl being less flammable than wood, which isn't true. I'm really on the fence about this. It's not visible from the street. It is an incredibly high price for a garage roof that isn't visible. And I, for one, see the electrical wires as frightening, but if the cedar is fireproof, then that's really not an issue. So.
Since I've done what research I can, limited research. They said that, what I've looked up said that cedar shingles would have to be treated on a regular basis to keep them fireproof? Is that
So
true?
if they're pressure-treated and fire-retardant, that's not the case. It would be the same as any other treatment of any roof, in that the lifetime of the roof, it should be substantial. In other words, eventually, the useful life of that roof will expire, at which point they would be less or more susceptible to fire, yes.
And it's not fireproof. We should use the expression fire resistant,
Yeah.
because it's not fire.
Everything burns. Everything burns after a certain amount of time. There's nothing that is fireproof.
It's a matter of
Everything
heat, everything burns,
Everything
yeah.
Pip?
I know that the issues with shingle roofs and all of that have been very contentious on this board, but I kind of feel like you've had asphalt on it for a long, long time, right? Did you say 3 layers of asphalt?
2 layers asphalt, 1 layer of,
Right, so if those shingles had been removed, then there would not be a problem.
right.
But since those shingles weren't removed, now it makes it a problem. So I, for one, think the asphalt is fine.
When the house was re-shingled, they did the garage and the house at the same time, and it appears that they just cheaped out they didn't strip it off the garage. They stripped the house. I go into my attic, it's all brand-new plywood from the inside, but the garage is, and the shingles are,
So
You
the
can't even call them
house
shingles anymore.
probably originally had shingle on it.
probably match, yeah,
There's
exactly,
No
yeah.
evidence now,
But-
right?
And
Right.
it was stripped off at that time, and that for some reason, probably nobody was looking at
Right.
cost effectiveness. They didn't strip the garage.
Right. So I personally, I mean, I understand the standards, and I know the standards say that it should be wood and that it should be shingle and all of that. I understand that, but I think the house is already asphalt, and I don't know why this garage in the back, I don't know what the garage in the back that nobody can see, being cedar shake, I don't see how that personally makes a difference, although I understand it's in violation of the standard. But I also think that on this board, there can be exceptions made to the standard as long as it's very clear in the resolution that exceptions are being made and why they are being made.
Thank you.
Tom?
The reason we have standards and the reason we have a board behind them is because the standards just absolutely don't work out in all situations. And like Pip, I feel this is a situation where putting a person to this amount of expense for something that's invisible and would have no impact on the beauty of our historic district or people visiting it or taking tours of the town is really an unrealistic request. And I know this is kind of a new addition to our enforcement to try to get original roofs back on. And if you were looking at your main house, which most obviously had a cedar shake roof built in the 1920s, I think we would have to take a firm stand. But I'm going to join Pip and say that I would be more than willing to allow you to do it with asbestos shingles.
Okay.
Corbin?
I haven't been on the committee that wrote the current, took the old guidelines and made them into standards. And I agree that there's got to be some flexibility in certain instances.
Corbin, push your button.
Sorry about that. That there's got to be, in certain instances, flexibility. This is a small building out of sight, as Pip said, and as Tom said it, and the main roof of the contributing house is asphalt shingles. So I would go with it.
Thank you.
I should have mentioned earlier in the evening, Lorraine Baldwin is member of City Council. She's the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission. She participates in discussions, but not in a vote. So, Lorraine, you have any?
I just have a couple of quick questions. You cited two homes in here across the street from you. The first one, was that replaced with asphalt shingles?
They're actually replacing it now, yeah.
They're replacing it now.
Yeah.
And then the second one, you said that they removed cedar shingles and replaced it with asphalt?
Right.
Okay.
They've stripped the whole, it was cedar. They took them all off and put asphalt on it.
Okay.
That's the house directly to my left,
Okay.
It's difficult.
And-
We don't consider prior applications as we move forward. We don't know whether it's contributing key or non-contributing.
Right.
I mean, we historically have not, each application is taken on its own merit.
It's on its own merits, right?
So it really doesn't.
Sure, he put it in his testimony, so I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we address that, and we addressed that when we were writing the resolution as well. But taking a look at the main structure, since that has been replaced with asphalt, I agree with what everyone has pretty much said here. Mhm.
So I have nothing really to add other than to agree that I would support this for all the reasons that Pip said, with one minor caveat, and that is that this is an exception given to the extenuating circumstances of this particular case, thereby not establishing a precedent.
You've already heard my comment. Do I have a motion?
I will make a motion that the application using Plan Number 2 be approved, and it be stated in our approval that this is an exception to our standards based on the fact that the building is invisible to any public access to that area.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes,
Ms. Wilson Stritick?
Yes,
Mr. Testa? Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
No. It, for the reasons that I've stated, although it's
Okay.
makes no difference. So, with that,
Thank you
Good
very
luck.
much.
thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Next order of business is Sella Tega LLC, 1521 Beach Avenue, Block 1174, Lot 15. It's a contributing property, and it's an addition.
Mr. Chairman, I hate to make a habit of this, but I'm going to have to recuse myself on this application as well.
It's a small town. Yes, it is.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Name and relationship to the property, please.
Sure. My name is Jim Nipper, and I'm the owner of Celatega in the house.
I'm
For 20 years.
I'm Joseph Adamson. I'm the architect on the project.
Okay.
So we are here tonight for final approval. This project's been in front of you at this point 2 times already. And, our last meeting here, I really think the only open-ended issue was the window that we were using. I did submit specifications for a Marvin wood window. I'd like to alter that slightly and also ask that you would consider a wood Colby and Colby window as well. I do have specifications for that I can submit. It's just we're shopping both of them right now, and we're just, based on availability and appearance on the house, it's just, we're really focusing on those 2 manufacturers right now.
And we went to that manufacturer because it's my understanding Colby's being used by a number of historic homes in Cape May, and we're just trying to price it out, taking a look at, since they have to be wood, mahogany windows. So,
Colby, as well as other manufacturers, make a wood window that's glazed, that is either aluminum.
Yeah, no, these-
vinyl.
No, this would be a full wood.
Full wood, no
This
vinyl.
is with a primed exterior.
Yep.
Yes, and I
that-
have
That's
specifications.
the spec?
Yep.
Yeah. Because Colby is a good window. Primed exterior is acceptable to the,
Yes.
has been acceptable to the,
And obviously, if we go with the Colby product, we would also use the Colby door as well, where if we were going with Marvin, we would use the Marvin door.
okay.
Beyond that, there was no other requests from the board.
So that's the only issue before us? Rather than go around the room, I would just ask if there's anyone on the commission that has a question about that.
Just one.
Sure.
By the way, nice job responding to our recommendations in this process you've been through.
Oh, no problem.
Just, this is a minute detail, but the specifications you submitted for the Marvin windows, the Ultimate Series is actually aluminum clad unless you specifically specify a wood exterior, so I just want to make sure.
Which I did on the drawings, if you noticed that. I specified a
I tried
Marvin
to find,
Ultimate wood.
well, you say all wood, but that's not actually from their catalog, so The terminology is exterior wood and what, as Warren says, prime. That's
Yeah, well, I will go on record saying that we specified an exterior
Great.
wood product. So,
I think some of the initial worries about this was a rather large addition to a property. But as I look at it, you know, it really is set on both sides behind the house. The only real exception to that is the columns coming out in front, which would not be much of an alteration as you look down to the house. Considering the rather not so Victorian beautiful construction behind you, the density of that makes this look relatively small in comparison. And I think you've answered all the questions, and I think a motion that would include doing either the Kobe or your specified windows, so leaving you open with.
That's what we're asking,
with that
yes.
choice would
So,
be okay.
perfect.
Yeah, I'm looking at page 10, and it does talk about manufacturer standard factory applied primer. And it's wonderful these days because we have a compliance officer that goes around and checks that kind of stuff. Yeah, is this,
I'm not looking to test it.
is this my comment?
You can keep that, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
it's fun reading if you really can't fall asleep one night.
If you can't get to sleep.
I got through page 10 just like that, right? Terrific. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the application with the option of using either the Kobe or the windows specified in the application that is before us. With a special note that under either one, with either one, the wood would be prime wood for all the windows.
Yep.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Ms. Wilson Stridick. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes,
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Just out of curiosity, what's the next step to get a building permit then? Where does it go from here?
You should be able, this goes to a resolution next month, and then from there, you will be able to get a building permit.
Building permit? Okay, great.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thanks for your help.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. My packet.
Oh,
It is.
this is mine over here. Okay.
They're the same. Next order of business, 409 Elmira LLC. This is 409 Elmira Street, Block 1060, Lot 33. This is a non-contributing building and a demolition. And then after that, there'll be a non-contributing building, a new building, mixed use, 3-story. So demolition first.
Just, Mr. Chairman, just a minute while the architect sets up, please.
Schuylkill there for a minute. We need names and property, please, for the file record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Anthony Monzo, representing the applicant, 409 Elmira LLC. To my right is Louis Delasso, who is the architect on the project, and Joe Schulte on my far right is a member of the applicant. So the
Thank
initial...
you.
Thanks.
Take it away.
So initially, this first application is for the demolition of this property. You know it as the Depot, which was an eating establishment that existed for a few years. I believe this building, based on the report, was constructed in around 1987. It's in the C1 zoning district, which permits commercial retail eateries. And with respect to demolition, I'm going to have Mr. DeLasso go through the 9 factors in your ordinance and present any other evidence that's needed for this application. So, Mr. DeLasso, if you can just go through, and maybe just give a little bit of background first, and then we'll go through the 9 factors.
The existing building is indeed used as a restaurant, mostly for preparation of food with outdoor seating. There's some limited indoor seating to it. There have been various refrigeration boxes that have been added along the back of the property. These are pictures of the property that you can see. It's been modified in various formats as it's been evolving, and my client, Mr. Schulte and Ms. Shirella, basically turned it into Prawn just prior to COVID and then got hit. So it's a very small property, limited in terms of access, and it's a concrete block structure with a wood frame roof. Basically, Mr. Monzo?
So let me just go through the factors, and I believe probably the first 7 apply. We're not proposing to move this, so I don't think 8 and 9 would apply to this application. So the first one is considering its historic, architectural, cultural, and aesthetic significance.
There's very little aesthetic significance and/or there's no historic significance to this building, per se. It's just a converted garage, for lack of a better phrase.
Could you elaborate on its current and potential use for the purposes currently permitted, and also for the use proposed in this particular zone?
It's a permitted use for restaurants. I'm not sure that there definitely is not enough parking for the number of seats that are there, but it's a pre-existing condition. We propose, as you will see later, for retail stores and complete reconstruction of the site.
Okay, the third factor is its importance to the municipality and to the extent to which its historical or architectural value is such that its removal would be detrimental to the integrity of the historic property or the district and the public interest.
Removal is, in my opinion, not going to be detrimental at all, and I'm hoping that with the cooperation and input from the board, this property is, for all intents and purposes, part of a gateway for the public into Cape May. It adjoins a public parking lot to one side, adjoins the bus depot to the other side, and people can walk through or around that area, not easily, but that's part of the problem, and I'm hoping that we can develop a gateway, more of a gateway or welcoming type project.
The fourth factor, to the extent to which it is of such old, unusual, or uncommon design, craftsmanship, texture, or material that it could not be reproduced or could be reproduced only with great difficulty.
No, it could be reproduced. It just is not the kind of material that I would want to reproduce, frankly. I don't know how else I could say it.
Okay, just 3 more.
Go ahead.
The extent to which its retention would increase property values, promote business, create new positions, attract tourists, students, writers, historians, artists, and artisans, attract new residents, encourage study and interest in American history, stimulate interest in the study in architecture and design, educate citizens in American culture and heritage, or make the municipality a more attractive and desirable place in which to live.
Without the quality of the restaurant that has been there these past year or two, I don't think it's got anything that would be offer anything beneficial to the city in that area.
Okay, the sixth one is the impact of its removal upon the historic district.
I think, and I'm hoping that, as I said earlier, with the new project, we can develop with your guidelines and input, something that would enhance the area and the region.
Okay, and the seventh one, which in this case is the last one, is the structural soundness and integrity of the building and the economic feasibility of restoring or rehabilitating the structure so as to comply with the requirements of the applicable building codes.
Structurally, it's sound. There's not a question about that. To make it adhere to the standards and the materials that would make it attractive would require extensive reconstruction along the facade and potentially the roof as well.
And just, there are the factors I wanted you to consider, but if you can just talk about what the building's currently being used for and what is, I know it's not an application for the proposal, but maybe just enlighten the commission as to what the plans are.
As I said, what we're looking to do, the current use is a restaurant. My clients have been fortunate to have a thriving restaurant in another location in the city. They were going to use both of these, but with the lack of being able to get help, workforce-type help, they're consolidating and focusing on the other facility. So we're looking to make this, as I said, more attractive and get better use out of the site in terms of what's permitted there. The idea will be to demolish the site and get rid of all of the concrete, and you see there's planters there, and basically, hopefully, make it more aesthetically pleasing by putting a retail store, which is permitted on the first floor, and 2 apartments above that retail store.
Could I, if I could interrupt, sorry.
No?
But to save you some time, these are two, as you know, they're two
Yeah.
separate and distinct applications. The first is a demolition, and I would suggest we move to the demolition before we go.
I speak too much, so yeah, I'll shut up.
I agree, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to give some perspective, but I agree with that. And I believe that's the extent of our testimony. Mr. Schulte's here to answer any questions, as well as Mr. Delasso.
Again, I don't think we have to go around the room on this. I would ask, with regards to demolition, are there any questions by members of the commission? Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I think the criteria here for demolition have been well demonstrated, so I would move that we grant the demolition permit.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Testa, seconded by Mr. Stevenson. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to the second application, Mr. Chairman, same applicant, 409 Elmira LLC, Anthony Monzo for the record, representing the applicant, along with Louis Delasso as the project architect and Joe Schulte as a principal of the applicant. And I'm just going to turn it over to Mr. Delasso and have him walk you through the plan that has been put in place. He'll go through the material list, and he has some visuals that he wants to share with you as well.
Stop me when I talk too much.
Okay.
Thank you. As you can see here in this first exhibit, this is the site from an aerial of the site with the proposed project placed over the existing area with the bus depot and the bicycle shop in this area and that large parking lot, which someday I hope will be refurbished. But what we're looking at in 3 dimensions is basically having this overlook, the building overlook this grand area here and connecting a walkway. Doing a walkway from the bus garage through to Elmira Street to facilitate pedestrian traffic. And in the process, I looked towards taking a lot of the design guidelines for shingle style construction and incorporating them into the building. The outside of the building would be hardy board shingles. There is a fiberglass roof that would be proposed for this. There are steep pitched roofs that enable us to go higher, a little bit higher than the allowable 35 feet as the ordinance does allow. And as you can see on the first floor here, there is a garage for one of the residential spaces, and I'll go over where the parking is. But this is retail area here. And this is a covered walkway that goes through to the bus depot. This is all brick down here. There's a storefront glass here, but these are all wood, Anderson wood windows, 6/1 windows. The pediments are enunciated with the stoops and the trim on that aspect of it. And I've got square columns with chamfered corners, and the main stair to the second floor comes through and up to a common balcony here that allows entry into one unit or the other unit, and either front door is surrounded with side lights and a transom. There are the ceilings are 9 feet on the first living floor, and then there's a private balcony to one side. I would love to have had the symmetry there for the balcony on the other side, but that's in the setback, and we don't want any, we want to have as minimum amount of variances as possible on this. There's some minor cleanup variances that may be required. At any rate, again, keeping with 6/1, there is a sliding glass door on the first floor of the living units that is a 4-panel sliding glass door on either side. Along the walkway for ease of access, there's again another access to the retail store in the center, and then there's a brick enclosed trash area to the rear. Whoops. And this is the side looking at the building from the bus depot. Again, materials are consistent. There's metal, standing seam metal roof accents in certain areas. 3-inch standing seam metal roofs. And in addition, I've indicated areas for the signs, the retail signs, 2 of them, that are 11 square feet each, and the requirement, should we get approval, will be for whatever that retail store is to come back in and get those approved separately, not knowing what the use would be. So 3-dimensionally, that's what you're looking at from Elmira Street. You're seeing parking spaces here that pull in. Several years ago, an easement was given to the city for 5 feet at the front of the property, taken away to help ease the traffic and situations or access for utilities for the city, I believe.
Actually, that was to widen Elmira to make it two-way traffic, and that was part of that.
So, and in the process, they gained 2 off-street parking spaces from the city. So we have 2 off-site parking spaces plus the parking 6 spaces on-site. And that's more than what's there right now, but that's where we are. You can see I'm looking to landscape the rear, which is the bus depot side, and there's pole lights that are indicated on the plans on either side here, and there's a wall-mounted light here, but most of the lighting underneath here is soffit lighting. So that it'll give a downlight glow, but nothing bright in that area. Again, the doors as you're going in, side lights, top transom, side lights, wood door, and basically putting in an elaboration above the sliding glass doors in an effort to make them look more French doors than sliding glass doors. The 2 center panels open up to either side, and then we have the top decorative pendant. The siding, again, to be hardy shingle siding. The brick is the brick tiles. They're about less than a half inch, 3/8 of an inch to an inch thick, that are then adhered to an appropriate surface. Some of the decks are going to be waterproof decks. Wherever we have a deck, we're going to attempt to have teak put on top of the waterproof decking, so that it'll look as if it were wood, but there's a waterproof surface underneath. Again, I indicated that there would be the Anderson 200 series windows, and the column wraps will be an AZAC. If I can get wood or prefabricated columns, we will get them. But right now, I've designed it so that they would be 6x6 wood posts wrapped in AZAC with articulations at the top of the capitals, as you can see on the plans, and mid-capital and down at the base. The railings, I made a mistake on the application. My math is good. We indicate 1.5-inch balusters, square balusters, but I indicated them to be 3 inches on center, so that would give me no space between them. What I meant to say was they would be 3 inches between the balusters. So that's my mistake, sorry. Shingles, roof shingles would be fiberglass shingles. I'm looking at the Timberline series for the shingles. As I said, what I tried to do in comparison, now you don't have this slide, and I apologize, I'll get you a copy of it, is I took the standards of the shingle style construction in your handbook, and I looked at a lot of those and tried to incorporate them into this plan. I think the one other thing is a Clopay composite garage door. That's briefly what we planned, I hope.
Thank you. This is conceptual, so
Yes.
you're going to zoning for,
We're going to the planning board
Planning
for
board
site plan,
for-
and we have a couple minor variances.
and what are the variances that you're looking?
The variances are we need relief for the back-out parking. We need the other two variances. Lou, do you have them?
Mr. Hurlis claims that we need a variance for this parking space because it is adjacent, it doesn't have a buffer to it. We've designated that parking space for residential space, and this for residential space, which do not require buffers against other districts. He wants us to be safe and ask for that variance, which we're going to ask the board to rule on that.
The third one is because two of the parking spaces are not on-site, and the agreement that was reached with the city is they would give an easement for the front, lose parking spaces, but the city dedicated 2 parking spaces, the first 2 parking spaces in the municipal lot exclusively for this property. So even though they're counted, they're off-site, and therefore we need a variance for having 2 off-site parking spaces.
Your setbacks are
We have no setback problems.
and the height of the building?
Height of the building is allowed because of the section that, it says that if we have higher than, I think it's more than 612 pitches, we can go up to 38 feet, which is what we are. That is to the very peak here. Pardon? 38 feet to the top of this penthouse here. The mechanical equipment, the condensers, are located on the roof here. It's behind a screen. So it's 38 feet. These pitches, as you can see, are 812. The ordinance allows us to go higher if we exceed a 612 pitch, which we have, and that's been reviewed and agreed to by Mr. Hurlis, I believe.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Were there any other materials that are not part of your presentation that is on the list?
I think we covered them.
The window trim, did you address window trim and fascia?
The window trim is, I want to try and keep it with a hardy board, the hardy board material. And basically, you can see I have a top trim piece with 1x4s and a bottom 1 1/4 inch stoop at the bottom for them. If we can't get the AZAC to comply and look proper, the hardy board, we would then go with AZAC.
And lighting fixtures and all that?
They're on the plans. Let me go back here.
about the location, but,
The kind, yeah.
good.
That's Pete.
Here you go. This
Let's
is,
start around the room.
I also, for just, if I may, this is the reason I couldn't put it, you can see this in 3 dimensions here, which may give you a little better idea of my insanity,
Of your what?
of my insanity.
Of your insanity. Okay. It rotates
Don, you
real
want
good.
to kick it off?
So conceptually, with regard to scale and articulation and materials, I have no problem with it. However, one of the things we are charged with on this commission is to hold on to the design standards, and there is one issue that I have to raise. And on page 64 of our design standards, it states, locating off-street parking in front yards is not appropriate. Additionally, driveways and alleys should be used to access side and rear parking areas and garages. Furthermore, if you look at the distance between that last parking space, which I guess, if you consider north being up in your drawings, the easternmost space, it's only 120 feet from there to Lafayette Street, which means at most you could have 6 cars at that light, and I'm on that street all the time, and in the summertime, that's going to be a problem.
It's a residential space designated as the residential space. You're talking about this one.
Will you let me to finish, please?
I'm sorry.
Yep. So it seems to me that you could easily solve this. At first, I thought you could just take it and flip it 180 degrees because the third and second floors are precisely symmetrical around an east-west axis. However, it doesn't quite work that way because you were very careful and I think deliberate about the degree to which you made the south elevation on Elmira Street have more character, scale, and its mass breaks down a little bit better than it does on the Osborne side, which is the more public and, I would say, visible street. But it simply, I think, could be resolved, and you could meet this part of our design standards by just simply reconfiguring the first floor in a way that would allow you to do that with parking on Osborne, which would be the back.
May I respond?
Sure, now I'm done.
You're dead on.
Yeah,
And I had that application designed that way,
yeah.
and that Osborne's not a street. Osborne's owned by the New Jersey Department of Public Transportation,
Oh,
and I could not use it for access to the site. And that was called to my attention by Mr. Hurlis correctly, and this was our resolution. I can't agree with you more in terms of access from the Osborne Court, but we can't get it.
are you required to have parking?
For the residential units, yes. For the, and we've sized the retail store such that it's just large enough to only require the number of spaces that we have. So we are not deficient when you count the 2 off-site spaces in parking requirements.
So to build these units and the retail space on the first floor, zoning is requiring 5 or 6 spaces?
8 spaces, 8 spaces total. There are 6 on-site
Yeah.
and 2 off-site.
So the only other comment that I have is, the only thing that I couldn't find on the drawings with regard to materiality is what are those parking spaces paved with?
Oh, the parking space is a concrete parking space, but the walkways are all brick pavers. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. You should have reminded me.
So I want to,
Brick or they're actual brick?
They're brick pavers
on the parking
on
area?
the walkways.
Okay, well, it's my last comment, and I'll just read straight from our standards on page 64. It
Sure.
says, new driveways and parking areas should be paved in materials that are compatible with the historic character of Cape May.
As I said earlier, I'd be happy with your input.
Yeah.
And to modify this to make sure everyone's comfortable with it, if you feel that, some form of paver should be used in that parking area, I'd be happy to listen and recommend it to my client.
Great.
Thank you.
I think what you had, you did a nice job. I am a little concerned with the parking and the safety as far as the parking is concerned.
We've engaged a traffic engineer
Okay,
to come in and provide testimony, and it'll be, the board will weigh that into consideration, because it was a concern that Mr. Hurlis raised, and so we're going to make sure that we have testimony that will support it, and we'll see how that plays out at the planning board. But thank you
Okay.
for that.
thank you.
Corbin?
I'm concerned about streetscape. That is the tallest building on either side of Elmira Street.
Correct.
And, there's no three-story buildings in that area. I would want it reduced down, size down, because it really doesn't fit in that neighborhood.
Well, the attempt was to basically break up those roofs rather than one massive roof in that area.
Well, it breaks it up fine, but it's still big, taller than anything else in the area. And streetscape, buildings have to fit within the area.
Understood, and that's part of the reason I had shown that original, yeah, and you're correct, it would be the tallest one in that area, but it's also surrounded by considerable open space. They're saying, Joe?
Jewelry store on the corner.
Talk into the mic, please.
Oh, I'm sorry. The jewelry store on the corner of Lafayette and Elmira is 3 stories. It's got a deck on the 3rd floor.
Over here?
It's 2 stories. That jewelry store?
2 stories in a row.
That's two-story.
I thought they were
And a dormer.
It's not 38 feet.
And maybe Lou can do
Soften it?
something from an architectural standpoint that'll at least change that look, and maybe at the top, we have that, those top areas.
That's my immediate thought when I looked at it, drove down Elmira Street, and looked at right across the street is a Lowe's, like a rancher, then there's the printer's shop.
Yes.
And then at the corners, are 2-story buildings. It's just,
There is a possibility of putting all rooftop deck on the one side that would reduce the height of one side of it and soften it somewhat. And again, I welcome and ask for your input. I'll take a look at that and see what kind of alternatives I could come up with, assuming we have success with the planning board.
Other comments, Corbin?
that's my main concern, is the fact that it's just too big for the area.
Yeah, thank you. Tom?
Well, before I start talking about architectural details, because I think it's a little early for that, I'm extremely concerned about the mass of this building on a very small lot. I think it's quite out of place. It'll look even 3 times bigger when it's up than it appears in your presentations right now. There's pretty much a wall to the pedestrian area, and then the pedestrians, okay, you're giving them a sidewalk, but they also have to pass behind 6 cars potentially backing out in probably the worst backing out street I can possibly think of. I know that's planning board, and I would be really amazed and disappointed if the planning board okayed that type of parking. That's the kind of stuff we fought back in the late 60s and 70s, when everybody was putting in back out parking. And we went back to, we want sidewalks, we want buffer zones, we want landscaping, we want a pedestrian feel to these areas. I don't see how you can possibly get that and achieve those factors. As I looked at it, I think the property could be suited for a 2-story building with a roof, with a much larger apartment, one apartment, your retail below, reducing your need for additional parking out front, and, reconsider the whole mass of the thing.
We did consider the mass, and that was a major concern as well. And that's part of the reason we didn't take advantage of the full setbacks. There is no setback required along Elmira
I
Street.
know that.
So we could build all the way up to Elmira, which would make it look even taller and give it more mass. And I agree with you, I don't think that that would be appropriate. I would love to find an alternative for the parking, and that will be discussed, to where we could continue the walkway through and maybe have one parking space at another site. The main reason we are not showing that right now is to minimize the number of variances to be able to work with the board and you as your commission, so that we can basically come up with something that works to everybody, not to everybody's advantage, that's impossible, but that's more resolved.
I just think your wants for that property far exceed what planning, zoning, and HPC guidelines, standards permit in that area. And I would have a very, very hard time voting for something that's had that density, even if we kind of came up with the improvements. You know, it's 38 feet up in the air, you know? You pointed out the little jewelry store across the street. That has nice setbacks, a porch on the front of it. You know, this is just a wall that goes up with a garage.
38 feet is to the very top of the condensing units. It's not the whole building.
And this condenser units just look like,
It looks like a hat sitting on top looks like a hat sitting on top of
yeah,
it.
yeah, they're huge looking, yeah. Now, I've seen condensing units go on that, you know, look like captain's walks and widow's walks and things like that. You have major box area up there.
It's a buffer around it. If you can see, there are 3 condensers up here, standard condensers. And what this is a screen wall. I don't think anybody will ever be able to see it other than simply the screen wall.
Well, it looked much bigger than what you were putting up there. Is it just the roof next to it that's
Yeah, that's,
making it look so much taller? Does that?
Well, it is.
Yeah, okay, you got,
see, there's 3 condensing units.
do you need that other roof area above it?
That is access to that's a penthouse access to this roof, to these roof decks. Do I need it that large? No, I mean, obviously the stair goes down,
Yeah.
and I could make that in such a way where this could slope down, and I could soften that.
Well, you could change the pitch
Yes.
of the roof. But, okay, let's continue
Okay.
on. Other comments?
Well, the wall that you have that we're looking at right now that faces the bike shop is an incredible wall, but it shows more windows in it.
It does, and I did not modify the 3-dimensional. I have alternating piers for the bricks at the ground level because the bicycle parking garage is right here.
Yeah.
And then, yes, I added windows and more articulation on that wall to soften it.
So what's in here has, with more windows,
That's-
more what you're looking at than what I'm seeing there.
Yes. Well, that's what this is, yes.
I rest my case.
Yep.
So my concerns also would be with the streetscape. And I think typically we ask people to provide pictures that show the streetscape. So it would be nice to see this building against the bicycle shop and this building with the other buildings that are across the street. So it would be easier to judge how tall, how massive this building is, this particular building, and how it relates to the other structures. Probably also including the actual depot, the actual bus depot, although that's pretty far away, but, and I'm sure it's not necessarily taller than that, but.
Oh, it's not.
But this is probably always, I mean, I don't know if it's always going to be a parking lot or not, but it probably is always going to be a parking lot. So this building's always going to face a parking lot and be behind this bike shop and whatever. So it sticks out because there's nothing to the left of it. And, I mean, as far as the streetscape goes. So that would be my primary kind of comment, is that it should fit with the streetscape, and it would be nice to see pictures so we could kind of see how the streetscape lines out.
Okay?
Janice?
I concur with the previous comments. I don't have anything to add.
Jake?
Just, regarding the streetscape again, if, when people are coming in through the bus terminal and they're trying to look at this place and say, oh, I'm in Cape May, the thing that stands out to me the most is that there's a garage door visible from a couple feet off of the sidewalk, basically. And I know that's something that the commission usually frowns upon.
Jim?
I feel like a baseball player who's going to agree with what his manager says in the aspects of playing the game. Obviously, this replacing what we've just granted a demolition permit for is a worthy attempt. I think the use of the materials was a really good attempt to use the brick and to use the sidings. I think those are very cleverly done. I have to agree, I started from the top looking at how tall this was. I thought the equipment on top looked like it was wearing a giant hat. It's really too tall. I'm inclined to agree with my fellow commissioners who say that this probably ought to be recast as a two-story structure and not a three. But if it's a three, it's just far too tall, particularly with the hat that sits on top. It is going to look massive, particularly from Elmira Street, and I think it's going to pose some traffic problems. But its overall size and its height are my biggest problems. The materials, I think, look really good.
Thank you. I agree with fellow members. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion that this project be tabled to give the applicant a chance to absorb all the comments that you've heard and try to come back addressing those comments with something that would be more amenable to us and our consideration.
Okay.
So that, and I would request that you keep the time running open for you to have the time to work on that and us not to have to approve it in the meantime.
Does that stop us from going?
No, we're looking for a November meeting at the planning board. So if we can come back to the commission in October, Judy, if that's,
Well, so the motion is made to grant, is to just table it, not grant any kind of approval, because conceptual with too many changes to the concept just isn't going to fit.
Because I think I'm pretty sure they want to come back, and I have a feeling that they will be trying to follow what they've heard here.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
And is there any 45-day statute we have to worry about in terms of limitation waivers here, since our council isn't present?
we'll waive any,
Want to waive the 45-day?
We should ask
So
to waive the 45.
yeah, we,
So motion is to table, and the applicant agrees to waive the 45-day period of action.
only thing is
I'll second that.
how we want to handle the parking.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Cogswell. Ms. Campbell?
Yes,
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes,
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes,
Thank you.
can I ask one question?
sure.
I know the vote's been cast, but I just want to make sure I'm clear, because the first comment that was made was regarding the parking, the back out parking, but now not having access to Osborne. Is that still a major concern? Because there's nowhere else to access off-street parking based on.
Well, can I answer that?
Yeah.
Right now,
Answer
you
for
have
yourself.
2 back-out parking spaces there and a little bit of front yard in front of the Prawn Restaurant. So now that would become 5 spaces on this plan. I certainly, if something is existing, we can't really take it away. I would not want to see it expanded to have 5 spaces and that much more of an interruption there.
Currently, there are 2 stacked, so there are 4 spaces there that are backed out currently.
Well, stack's even more of a problem.
I know.
Then you got to move one car and
That's
hang
what
it out in the
exists
street
right
to get
now.
another car out.
It's difficult to
Yeah.
approach I don't want to sit here and agree, and I understand your comments, and I'm going to try to resolve them or address them. I don't know that I can do it with the parking. That's one of the.
Well,
Could I
it's a
just-
really tough property.
Could I just interrupt, though, because we're not going to solve that here. Question I have is you have to go to planning.
Yeah.
You wanted to come back in October. Are you going to try to go to planning before you come back? It seems to me that this parking issue, for example, is beyond the HPC. We don't accept parking in front because it's not appropriate from an aesthetic standpoint. Now, in the historic district, people didn't have cars, so you didn't park in the front, and as a result, you don't back out. But that really is planning and zoning issues. And it seems to me if we table, which we agreed, but then you go back and you draw all that, and then you go to planning and they tell you you can't back out on Del Mar, then you got to come back again.
Should we go to planning first?
No, it
I
seems.
mean, even if we go to planning and get approval from planning, I speak for myself, but I'm sure the client would agree that we would come back here and attempt to resolve issues.
And the only, the catch on this is the fact that if we go to planning and with these two apartments and everything is based on that, we want to see that the HPC is okay with the basic design of the building, scaling it down a little bit. And if we have to come back a third time because of the parking issues, we'll come back a third time. But I do want to at least get the bones of the building in place so that we get that situated.
So if I understand you right, Tony, you're going to come back and seek conceptual approval of this, and then you can move to final.
And if we have to come back because the planning board changes the parking, we'll come back here before we ask for final.
Yeah, well, of course, but
So-
I was just making sure.
Just one other thought about the parking issue. Being unfamiliar with the legalities of this particular site, would there be any opportunity at all to negotiate an easement from the back, from Osborne?
With whom?
Answer that one. It's been.
I'm just throwing that out, because we're not going to solve that here, it's just, yeah.
And I just,
Getting their attention at the government, or at the state level right now is not easy.
we can ask, but I just don't.
John, the city has difficulty even dealing with the train station and the parking areas around the train station with NJ Transit. I wouldn't put any hope in that as a,
And I can't imagine with their buses going.
I would.
That they're going to want to
it's
get,
not
an easement. An
the
easement.
approach to Osborne is just not going
I
to
would
work.
love to I would even like to see if we could get access from the city parking lot to those two spaces.
I was going to raise that next, right? Yeah. So
We're thinking along the
I think we are, yeah, okay, great.
You're talking about the gravel lot that's right adjacent to it. That would be the better
Yeah,
solution.
yeah,
That
that
would
you have a better
require
chance for.
a planning board city approval situation. But that would help immensely.
But
All right,
We got
thank
our
you.
work cut out for us. We appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next order of business is Hirsch, 22 First Avenue, Block 1014, Lot 9. It's a contributing property and looking for an addition.
Wow. I thought I was going blind.
Someone think we were operating in the dark? We were.
I'm sorry, I'll be out of your way in a minute.
Hi,
Good evening.
good evening. So my name is Carolyn Hirsch, and I reside at the house.
I'm sorry, could you move the mic closer? Thank you.
Sorry. My name is Carolyn Hirsch, and I own the property at 22 First Avenue in Cape May. And I came before HPC during COVID, and because of the pandemic, I wasn't able to start my construction. And also, my builder had taken on a very large project for a hotel downtown and was no longer available. So I had to recircle with a different builder, and that builder had questions about how the plan was originally put together, which required me to go back to an architect and take a look at some modifications. The main modification, which is really more with the building application itself to get that permit, but it does indeed affect the outside, is that I'm looking in the rear of the building to extend the house 4 feet, the porch actually 4 feet, And what we came up with was, there is a rear staircase in my house, and that staircase are very steep steps. It's not a normal flight of steps to get up the back steps. It's difficult for people to use it. Our animals can't do that. And the new group that I'm working with had proposed that because the rear of the house, which you can see from the photos, is literally falling off of the house, I have to rebuild the entire rear of the house. So if by extending it out an extra 4 feet, they can do an L-shaped steps going in the interior of the house, which will allow for the regular code requirements of getting from one floor to the next. So that was the purpose of the extension, which just changes the size of the deck coming off and a little more railing area.
I bet you're not in need of any zoning permissions.
No, it doesn't require anything. As a matter of fact, originally, we actually knew we had enough space because I was thinking about a swimming pool, but I've nixed that, I'm not doing that. And so we have ample room to extend the yard area a little bit.
But you do want a garage in the back?
We're going to do a one-car garage shed in the rear, yes.
Okay.
Do you know when this house was built?
I do. 18, sorry, I have it actually at my seat, I should know that. Would you like me to pull that for you? I can.
There should be a survey for this house.
Surveys, I guess before. I don't remember that garage.
1886 was the
May I
agreement of...
see that, please?
Sure,
Just for a moment.
yep,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, this is a contributing property. It's not marked on, it's not marked on mine, but this is contributing.
Yes,
Yeah,
86.
well, it's,
Well, it does say contributing,
where?
right here.
Looking at, I was looking
Yeah.
at the application, it just it got chopped off or squeezed out.
Okay, so we're looking for a 4-foot addition on the back, and you're also looking for a small garage. Yes?
It's actually a 3-story addition, not a 4-story.
No, 4 feet.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you said a 4-story addition. I was like, no. Yes, 4 feet, yes.
So the drawings, though, that we have, are these the ones that were submitted before and approved? Or is this showing the extension?
This shows the extension of the railing in the rear. Let me find the page.
So everything that is here in these elevations is in the application you're seeking tonight? The 4-foot extension you've been talking about?
That's correct.
Okay.
And this small building in the back, is it going to be used as a garage?
It'll be beach storage.
That's part of, that's one side.
Could you, what is the role of the roll-down
No, it's a
door on the front elevation?
That door
On a
is
sort-
not going to exist. The previous architect that I was working with had kind of just stuck that in there, but that will not be present.
This. I'm just gonna look at oh, this is.
Okay, so,
So, I'm sorry, since I wasn't here before.
Sure.
But can you, what were you approved to do in 2021?
I was approved for everything that I have submitted today with there was a few exceptions, which I had attached in the letter this evening. see where it was.
I'm trying to figure out.
Oh, I'm sorry, it had, the previous application had a handicap ramp, and it was approved with the condition that the ramp would not be in the new drawing when we build it, and that was removed, and there was one other. Let's see here.
Basically, all of this has been approved already, except
That's correct.
for putting these steps the way you want to put them in the back and the garage?
That's correct.
Okay.
Do we have a location of where the garage is going to be on the site?
It's an S4.
It's in the plan in the corner.
It shows it in the proposed site plan.
What page are you on?
S4.
S4.
So I'm sorry, I have here, the conditions that were set prior were no change to the appearance of the front of the property. A ramp is not part of the plan. Columns in the rear will match all the other existing columns on the building, and there will be no parking in front of the building.
Here's the garage. So if we're coming down and focusing on the garage, where did you come up with the design for this crosshatch on the garage doors, which looks a little bit more like a Art Deco kind of thing than a Victorian element?
I'm happy
Not that the
to,
garage is Victorian.
yeah, I can, may I get up for a second and pass these papers out?
Sure.
I had realized that when the previous architect had done that, he didn't draw the lines without standard, like, see, he didn't include the outline.
Oh, he cheated on us a little bit.
Yeah, so you're kind of missing, like, view. He didn't have the actual outline of the door. Or the shed, kind of a typical door.
This is the door.
So that's the door that will go.
No.
So we have multi-braces instead of two braces.
By the way, the conditions of the resolution from 2021 are on A2. They're listed quite clearly.
Are those garage doors all wood?
Yes.
Okay.
That's okay.
Look
Well-
like old-fashioned barn doors that they painted the supports for the wood a different color. Yeah.
Sort of a bad picture because it's showing a blue house with white trim as opposed to one color.
Rather than go around the room, I think we can just open it up for a general conversation. It's some confusion here because, you know, you were here before and we approved something and now we're looking at something else. And the plans are not as clear as I think they could be. On the other hand, I'm not offended by anything that is being presented. And you say you don't need any zoning, planning.
Those are right deep lots over there.
I'm sorry, can you say that?
Those lots are right deep. In other words, from the street to the back of the lot of area.
Yes.
Well, this shows 130 feet. How did you determine that you didn't need zoning or planning? Who determined that?
By the surveys and the work that was done. I think I submitted a survey of the property in my application. I paid Tom,
Well, the survey would tell you what the dimensions are. I I mean, you haven't, there's an engineering report here, and that's where you got the lot size and the plot plan and all of that. But it just looks like lot coverage, which is not what we deal with. But it just looks like lot coverage would be close to maximum. And so I'm really just curious as to how you determine that. And if we approve something and then you go to get a permit, then
So have you had discussions with the construction office about whether or not there's anything else, whether you satisfied those lot coverage conditions and things like that?
My understanding that everything is satisfied based on HPC approval of the design.
Yeah, but see, the HPC doesn't deal with those issues, right? So we can talk about materials and aesthetics and design, but the actual compliance with Sydney ordinances based on things like your overall coverages versus on the lot and various surfaces, I mean, all that is a matter not for HPC. It's determined by construction officials reading the codes. And I guess we're just asking you if you've done that so you know that when you do your addition and do your garage and add all that up, that you're within the allowable coverages for your lot in that area, because they varied.
Right. I started this process like 3 years ago, and I've been to this office a lot. And my understanding from the information that I presented was, like, the next step was to come to HPC. So now, when I get HPC, I still have to go back and file for my permits, and I'm sure that they'll review everything.
Well, if we gave you a certificate of appropriateness, that would authorize the construction official to issue a permit insofar as the HPC did its job. But I guess what we're asking is, have you covered the bases outside HPC world for purposes of, there are other reasons why you would need approvals and reviews. And I think you're telling me you did. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but your architect or your
According to the engineering survey, the areas where there's non-conforming are existing non-conforming. So that they,
yeah, but they're
But they're adding an addition, Corbin, and a garage.
I'm not sure if Steve, who's here with me, can answer this or not.
Perhaps you can approach and explain who you are.
So Steve is an architect who helped me take a look at the plans when the new builder was not satisfied with the interior clearance of the steps.
Before we
For
go
the
further.
Secretary, my name is Stephen Katz. I'm with the Katz Organization, and I'm an owner's rep for Carolyn.
KATZ?
AATZ.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In answer to the question, the architect who submitted the original plans had conversation with the construction department on impervious zoning, setbacks, et cetera. And with the previous application, that had already been discussed and resolved. The garage was on his original set of plans, and those drawings are actually his drawings, with the only amendment to the plan being the rear portion of the 4-foot plus or minus extension that Carolyn's requesting. So everything that is on those drawings had previously been approved and had been discussed.
And has been approved, and is conforming,
Yes.
or existing non-conforming and not disturbed.
And
Got it.
whatever was approved previously from the Planning Commission, from the HPC rather, is incorporated into the plan. So what Carolyn is really addressing this evening is just that change to the plans in the rear for that extension to create that staircase.
And one of the things that would be helpful for the slow people like me is when you do a revision, because this is what you submitted before, but when you do a revision, it's good for us to see that very specific part that's changed versus what we had approved before. I mean, that would let us focus in on, I can't look and see the 4 feet. If that were in red or it were dark or whatever, I'd say, okay, now I can see it. That's the difficulty. These appear to be the prior plans or the prior plans modified without us being able to see exactly what the new part is. I mean, that's my difficulty. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem.
And, as we're concerned with the exterior of the building, it's nice to have existing versus proposed elevations. This way we can look at it right away and see what you're planning on do. Looking at the proposal without an existing, it's just a guess.
So I think this is what we approved.
Not the existing photos took care of that.
Apparently, last year.
I had a question, how long ago was this approved?
May of '21.
Probably one of our Zoom,
When I had read the
you
instructions
look at
for sending the
S4.
change, I thought the pictures that I provided checked that box.
So if you would,
S4 shows a shaded area that is the deck.
if you would focus on A2 and look at the first floor plan. So the staircase to the,
Can we back up just a second?
Sure.
Because the interior floor plan is interesting, but not relevant. We're trying to figure out what we're adding and what it looks like.
S4.
I'm looking at S4. Excuse me for interrupting you, but
that's okay.
S4.
Understood.
Does this reflect the addition that you're talking about?
Only to the left of the rear wall, where you see the column. So if you would look at A2, I know you're not concerned with the interior itself, but it will highlight for you where the extension is. So if you look at A2, the first floor plan, the staircase and the door entering from the rear,
Wait a minute, let me find A2.
right after S4.
your second sheet. Second sheet.
Of course. Not logical, but that's where it is. All right, so we're-
Agreed. So if you look at the staircase on the first floor plan and the door, that's the area of extension. So that plus the porch slid back. There was in the previous plan the rear deck that is shown on this plan. The highlighted area on S4 that you're questioning about, the majority of that deck area was on the previous plan as well. So it's only from the staircase wall moving back towards the rear of the property. That's where the floor extension took place. So that area just shifted backwards.
And including the step, that is 7.5 feet.
Yes, and to your point about the comparison, that staircase actually went out from the door that is drawn and went out almost the same exact distance, just perpendicular to the rear wall. So it just turned. So it's really encompassed the same amount of area.
Yeah, but
And it still remains beyond the setback. The setback requirement was, I think, 25 feet. It's 29 feet from the rear property line. To the deck.
To the end of this.
To the end of the deck.
End of the deck, yeah. So,
Satisfied?
I don't know.
I'm feeling pretty satisfied.
I agree, it's a small extension to something we've already approved, where we've already satisfied the conditions. That's what I see. That's what I understand now.
Okay.
I will recommend approval, subject to receiving a new plan for the garage that shows the proper doors and a removal of a sliding window on the side to complete the plans that will go to the construction office.
Well, I have one more question before that motion. There are two balconies that you're calling waterproof fiberglass balcony. I'm not sure what you mean by that. And there's a section, 5 on A6, but A6 isn't here, so I couldn't find out what exactly you're talking
On
about there.
sheet A4,
A4?
which is the exterior elevation.
Well, that's what we're trying to confirm.
No, but I don't know what is fiberglass.
Just the deck, just the.
The decking itself?
surface on the balconies, yes.
Generally speaking, on contributing structures, even if it's an addition, that's not an appropriate material. So would you consider another material?
Isn't it already approved?
It's already approved.
Well, I don't know that. I'm not looking at drawings that said that the fiberglass balcony was already approved. I can't tell.
Fiberglass over what?
Fiberglass over frame.
Over a frame.
Wood frame deck, because that's over a finished room below, and that was on the previous plan.
Okay.
That's not a change.
So the fiberglass is being applied over a wood structure
That's correct.
to make it waterproof.
Correct.
There is wood. And we approved it.
So I made a motion.
You made a recommendation.
Well, I made a motion. No, I made a motion.
Do I
that we
have a
approve it
second?
with
I second Mr. Carroll's motion.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Ms. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Cogswell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stridick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
may I ask a question?
Sorry for the
As
confusion.
far as the process of resubmitting a picture for the garage, can you just tell me what that process is?
You would submit it to,
HPC
into the HPC office.
Okay, and then do I have to come back for another hearing for that? Okay.
Well, it depends on what it looks like.
But
Okay.
it's final with that, with that condition, and I'm assuming that it'll be approved or reviewed by the review committee without another hearing necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next order of business, Elaine's Property Management LLC, 513 Lafayette Street, Block 1053, Lot 13. This is a contributing property, and we're talking about a retaining wall.
So my name is Shirley Finney, 513 Lafayette Street. That's my husband, Patrick Wall. So what brings us here today, again, it is a series of misunderstandings or, I don't know, some quirk of fate. When we originally got our approval to do the work that we're, site work that we're doing, we had an extension of pavers on the, facing the front of the building on the right side, and new pavers on, to match on the left side. So I had a visit from Craig Hurlis in the beginning after I had gotten approvals, and Craig had to make like a minor adjustment because the original drawings had the bar in the front, which they had approved, and we were moving the bar to the back. So he went through committee to get it reapproved, so we could save some time not having it get approved. And I said, Craig, I'd like to walk the property with you and show you what I'm thinking. Everybody is concerned after the accident, and everybody we talk to says, barrier, 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 barrier. So I said, I'm thinking of putting a wall up so we have some sort of physical barrier other than a plant in case a car comes barreling into our property. And he said, you're allowed to put a retaining wall up to 24 inches. I said, if this is going to cause me a problem, if it's going to back me up, I don't want to do it. I just think everybody's concerned about safety, and I want to, as well as myself, and I want to address the safety, because down the road, if somebody got hit on our property, they'd say we knew it was a problem and hadn't dealt with it. So Craig said, no problem. He said, hand draw it on a piece of paper and explain, what you're doing, and I'll put it in the file in case there's any problems. So I've paid $47,000 to the builder for beautiful stone. Now, I understand.
Excuse me, though, you were stopped, isn't that true?
Stop? Yeah, the job stopped.
Didn't you get a red tag?
No, we didn't get a red tag. They just asked the builder to stop building the wall.
And did that building stop?
Of the wall, yeah, absolutely. One half of the building has a wall, the other half doesn't have a wall. And I had gone with the zoning, and showed them the product, and everything when we did our site plan was to match, to match, to match. So previously, when Tom Carroll was on the, I think head of the HPC, he had approved the gray stones.
No, I was never head of the HPC.
Oh, well, I know we went through an informal meeting with you.
Informal discussion.
Yeah, so, but I was just doing everything to match. So it was gray stone, so I'm matching gray stone. And then, of course, we face the Catholic Church, it's gray stone, there's stones everywhere in Cape May. I didn't realize it was going to be an issue until, and Craig Hurlis didn't think it would be an issue because I said, if it's going to back us up, if there's any problem, I don't want to do it. He said, nope, you're allowed to do a retaining wall. And then as it turns out, we needed the retaining wall because that part of the building was higher. And so my retaining wall is not to replace the flowers, which are hydrangeas. Across the whole front of my building is hydrangeas. They're 5 to 6 feet tall. Our wall, as soon as those hydrangeas next year come in, you're not going to see the wall. It's going to be hydrangeas, which is what I thought everybody wanted. You'll never see from the outside of the building anything but the hydrangeas.
I'm just a little confused, and so I hesitate to interrupt.
That's okay, no, I think everybody
I'm
understands.
trying to save some time, and we've heard this before. You were here before, a while ago, and there was a discussion about you needed HPC approval. And now here we are again, a year later, and there's no understanding that you need HPC approval before you do something in the historic district with a historic property?
We thought we had historic approval for, we knew we had it for the pavers, and everything was to match. We had that. It's the retaining wall that was the issue. And when I asked Craig Hurlis, and again, the two boards
but you-
are opposite, I understand
You
that.
were told before that you needed HPC approval, and you came here before us and you talked to us, and now,
I
here we
understand.
are, a few months later. and I haven't
This
said-
is really like, I mean, it's like a baseball game, you know, you got to touch all the bases to come around and score the run. This is an HPC application, you filled it out, and it covers the things it's supposed to cover. It does cover things like retaining walls and landscaping and hardscaping, and this application has been the kind of thing that's been in front of you for other occasions. I just fail to understand how you could just depend on someone who's not related to the HPC. Yes, he's a city official, a city engineer, but he's not the HPC. Would you not have understood that you needed to be here?
What I understood was we had approvals through HPC for the pavers. So the wall was, what my understanding was, you're allowed to have a retention wall for the pavers, that it wasn't a separate issue, that it was the same issue. Now, I understand, but again.
It's not.
It-
Just
I
very simply,
understand.
it's not.
But so is there a problem with the stone wall?
Excuse me, though, but even after Bruce went out and stopped the project, you continued to plant shrubs and continued to do work, isn't that right?
He said, get your plants planted because that's what they want to see. He said, get your shrubbery in.
Who said that?
Bruce.
No.
He said they want to see the planting in. They want a barrier. They want it,
No,
so we
you-
ran and put those plants in
Bruce
so
is the
fast.
compliance officer for the Historic Preservation Commission.
But-
At my direction, he went out and told you to stop.
Well, actually, he spoke to the builder, not myself, never gave him a red sticker, and he said, stop building the wall. And the builder said, what about the rest of it? He said, you can keep on doing the rest of it. I didn't, and that was what the conversation was with the builder.
I'm getting an awful lot of stories here. Conversations that first were with you, then they were with your builder, Bruce, Craig Hurlis. I can't believe Craig would say, go ahead, continue.
Can we ask Craig? And I have the email. Matter of fact, I have the email
Really
that we
doesn't-
sent him.
Doesn't matter to me. I think you have a duty to, and you've been before us before, you know what an HPC application is, you know what it covers. This is it. It should have been in here before Stone 1 went onto that wall. I fail to understand how you could not know that.
So there are a couple of
Well,
other
because I
issues.
was counting on my builder and the zoning officer, because I do not know the law. And my builder and my zoning officer.
The zoning officer and the compliance officer are the same person. So I don't know who zoning person you're talking to.
He's talking about Bruce.
Bruce. I've talked to Bruce half a dozen times. The builders talk to
So
him.
have I.
They're there every day. I know, and
So have
again, that's why I pay a builder and these people, because, again, and
The problem at the end of the day is the material used on this wall. Even the wall is in question, but the material used in this wall. One person on this commission, my opinion, is it's not appropriate for that wall. And it should have come before the HPC. John, did you want to say something?
Yeah, because the reason we need to see this is because the drawings that you've submitted for the site plan, once you put the wall in, there's significant reconfiguration of what you're paving. Additionally, we don't have any idea, without a submission, what is the material you're planning on using for the wall. And unfortunately, it's not stone. It's an artificial stone made of cementitious material, which our design standards explicitly state for a contributing structure should not be used or should be avoided. So it would have been highly likely that we would have asked you to replace that material and be able to make sure that the configuration you're presenting is what's actually happening in the field. None of that happened, which is, I think, why you're receiving the responses you're getting.
I understand, and it was not intentional. Again, I rely on people that I pay to do it, and I didn't think there was a thing wrong with it. I don't know what the resolve is, but I think Craig would, it's two different boards, but that conversation did happen, and it is on file with them, and I just don't know where to go from here,
Now, maybe,
I'm here and-
maybe the wall was a new idea, and it was based on safety, and I think that's a laudable thing to do, to protect your patrons. But I'll tell you what I feel. We've seen now a couple of your plans. We've approved things that have allowed you to do major renovations. You very wisely moved things off to the side, and we went through great details. And having looked at those things, I feel like you didn't have a wall in mind when we looked at
We
them.
didn't. It was from the
Well, but the very fact that you now do, in my mind, suggests you should have said, wow, this is now significant. I need to go back to the HPC and have them approve this particular design feature. I'm just not, I'm not getting it.
I understand.
I feel like we've been-
20/20 hindsight, I would have. I don't mind coming over here and doing it. I want to be legit.
but
But
this
when
is-
when I
this
was
is the
told that
second
you
time
were
we've
allowed
had
to
this
have a
conversation.
retaining wall,
Do you realize
I'm like,
that?
okay.
This is the second time.
Yeah.
In
And
the
I-
prior period, we had the same conversation on another issue. And it was the same thing. You talked to everybody, you didn't know it was HPC. So, I mean, it rings a little bit hollow. But the real question, I guess, before us is the material on this wall. Personally, stone is not appropriate, and artificial stone is less appropriate in the historic district. A retaining wall would more likely, in the period of your property, would be brick. So can we go around the room and get some idea of what would have been approved material for this retaining?
I'm happy to volunteer that. I think we've approved and seen numerous brick walls. They would be terrifically appropriate for your property. To me, that would be what I would have approved had you, or suggested, had you submitted your application in a timely fashion. That's my view, and whether it was real brick, face brick, or brick on on something else, I would have wanted to see brick. And what you've presented is I know it looks like a parking lot barrier somewhere not appropriate for your structure. It
Very
may-
contemporary. It's a very contemporary look.
And I just wanted to say, if you wanted to see a good example, look at the patio that Peter Shields just put in. It's all brick, and something like that would fit in better. And one other comment I wanted to make was that, you keep justifying this by reason of safety. Well, I know you do have the retaining wall there to prevent people getting hit in the event of another accident. But in between these retaining walls, you still have bunches of tables just sitting on the lawn.
Well,
So,
they're to be
is it
moved
for
to the
safety,
deck.
or-
They're to be moved to the deck when the deck gets
But
built.
right now, they're sitting on the grass.
Well, I agree, I concur. I have tried very hard to comply. My sales are down close to $300,000 this year, and it's been very difficult, very ugly. It's a huge battle, and I contend that I think the historic does a good job and has a place, but it's been very difficult for me trying to survive this. And it's not the historic that was all these years ago when it started to help the buildings. I see every park that the city built has stones. The city built the parks. Why would I ever dream? The Max Show House has a stone wall, and it's wall and grass at the Max Show House. You guys, that was your
We've
pride.
had 10 different Max Show houses.
The one on the beach, was it 9 on Brooklyn and?
You're talking about 1601 Beach
That's in a
Avenue.
whole different neighborhood than you are.
I know, but I'm saying is
A stone wall.
brick is brick, but it's not the only
Well,
thing.
I have to correct you again, please. It's not stone. It's a concrete block made to look like stone. So using the word stone is inaccurate.
I
stone
didn't
would-
realize it wasn't stone.
And stone wouldn't be appropriate. Janice, you have a thought?
Well, I just know when I drove by, I'm like, what? I mean, it was pretty obvious to me that we didn't approve that. I was shocked.
So what would be the result? What would you want? To take down, take down the
Let
stone?
let us go,
Down a minute.
let us go around the room. The issue, Janice, is if the retaining wall were to even stay there, would you support brick,
Yeah, I would support brick, sure.
Pip?
I would support brick with maybe a limestone white top on that. That would be an appropriate thing to do. And I noticed in the other wall that you got stopped on, it's further out towards the curb than the one that that is now finished. I think they should be the same distance out, and you should immediately, to show good faith, get tables back away from that area to show that this really is a safety factor that's on that you're concerned about.
I wasn't concerned about the safety factor. I've been on that street I've been there for 34 years. Nobody's ever gotten killed on my property. 34 years. We've never even had an accident on our property. I've never had a lawsuit on my property in 34 years. I maintain my property. The city, every time I saw them, I'm like, there's like, oh, it's a hazard, it's a hazard, it's a hazard, it's a hazard. It was the city of Cape May that I was trying to appease. I'd be happy with no wall. It was approved with no wall, I'll put no wall up. It's fine with me. I have my flowers. The hydrangeas without the wall, they're blowing in the wind,
Let's continue
they're
around-
broken
around the room.
and whatever.
Corbin?
I mean, if you have to have a retaining wall, I would go with a brick retaining wall, like with a limestone cap, is what Tom said, because it's a period appropriate. Now, I'm going to say, there is part of this that the owner is responsible to see that all necessary permits and boards are taken care of. You know you have a historic property. You know that anytime you do a renovation, you have to come before the HPC or file an application.
Yep.
So I suggest, I don't know if the stone is just an applique, you could get rid of it and put brick, the thin brick on brick veneer. That would satisfy the looks, especially once the hydrangeas grow up.
Lorraine?
I agree with what everybody's been saying.
And I have nothing further to add that hasn't been already said.
All right. So I could stick with what was already approved, take down the wall and have no wall, and we're good with that. See where we go from there, right?
That may be more cumbersome than you think, because I think the elevation of the patio is higher than the ground in the front.
We had to have something there.
So it seems to me,
I don't like red brick. I'm not putting red brick up, and I already spent
Well, you might not have a choice.
$47,000. I can't spend another dime.
You might not have a choice.
$47,000. I
Well,
understand.
if you want, we
But
can
I
deny the
believe it-
application and proceed to enforcement.
What was that?
I said, if you want, we can deny the application and proceed to enforcement.
Well, I already approved for what we had done.
You're not approved for this wall.
Right, I said take down the wall and just leave no wall.
I don't know what
But
problems that presents you, but we've told you two things. One, what we think is the appropriate material. I'm sorry you don't like brick, but it is the appropriate material for your, with the exception of wrought iron fences, it's the appropriate material for your separating your property. And we've said it time and time again. We have a very complete application. You should read it, and you should abide by it before you do any other project that affects our jurisdiction. I really don't want to see this happen again.
It won't. I'm not building another thing in this town again, never.
It's up to you, but
I'm
our
done.
jurisdiction's pretty clear, and you're a pro at this, so you should know where we are versus where the other city bodies are.
And unfortunately, and I do take exception to the fact that Craig Hurlis and I hadn't had that conversation. We did, and I have the emails to prove it. But I'll take down the wall, and my understanding is the appeal for the historic goes to the zoning?
Goes to zoning.
So I'll go through zoning, see what they say, and if they say no, I'll tear it down, and I'll put no wall up. Again, 34 years, I've never had one lawsuit on my
It would be
property.
a lot more reasonable for you to embrace the fact that you had made a mistake, and the most appropriate correction would be to put a brick wall, brick face.
It is possible for this to get facaded in brick. I'm sorry you don't like brick, but probably not that difficult to facade it in brick.
Okay.
And comply.
Thank you.
So, but we're not done yet. We're going to have to approve,
Oh.
I'm going to make a motion to approve this, and then we can either approve it or deny it. Unless you want to withdraw it.
Well,
She can't appeal it if she withdraws it.
right now, she really wouldn't have anything to appeal because it says retaining. And what we're arguing is the material.
I would just like to add one more thing, that, proceed with the new deck in the back and the new bar, remembering how we're looking at these unexpected changes. So as you proceed with the new deck in the back, make sure it's what we approved.
So the status of this is what?
Well,
There's an application for final approval.
there's an application for a wall, but there's no material.
Well, it's pretty obvious that she's used pavers.
So-
She's used
Well,
cement.
what I would suggest, though, to help the communications, is that this wall be brick. So if we complete the application, that the retaining wall should be brick-faced and capped, then we can vote on it. I'm assuming the vote would be yes. If the vote is yes, then she has to comply or appeal to zoning.
Could you just add to that, that the walls that she's building have the same setback from the street? Because the one that got stopped was coming out even closer.
Well, if that's a solution, Tom, then make the motion and we'll vote on it.
But I just have one other thing to say. I didn't set where they went. The building went by Vince Orlando's EDA's drawings.
Were approved to the sidewalk on that piece, and that already went through you guys, and that was approved.
And he built it to the specifications that were on there. So we can't, I didn't have anything to do with that. I don't go tell the builder, put them here. They follow the drawings, and they measure with the measuring tape. That was already approved that way.
I will make a motion that this application would be approved if the walls are going to be brick with limestone caps, and they have an equal setback from the street for a point of good balance, and returned with all that in a drawing so that we can approve it with that.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, seconded by Mr. Testa. Ms. Campbell?
Yes, I guess.
Mr. Coxwell?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson Stredick?
Yes.
Mr. Testa?
Yes.
Mr. Stevenson?
Yes.
Mr. Carroll?
Yes.
Mr. Copeland?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Those original plans were, no, I'm talking about on the other side.
Open to public discussion. Anyone? And Judy, would you open it to the public by phone?
Oh, they're not allowed to do that, are they?
Oh,
They have to be here to be the public.
okay. Anyone? Oh. How's it going so far?
What a way to spend your night.
HPC application form, I know it's getting late, so I want to thank Corbin and Jim for the work that they've done. They've distributed a draft around, and a number of people have responded. Corbin wasn't available this afternoon, but Jim and I, and interestingly enough, my wife, who is an experienced rider, offered some assistance to help, and interestingly enough, also provided a fresh perspective, because all of us are so close to this. It's interesting to have someone not familiar with it read the instructions and have questions. So I think we made a lot of progress to a document that was already very comprehensive and very good. And originally, we set out to complete this in September, but actually, the product is more important than a due date. And so we're letting that roll a little bit. Over the next week or so, a redraft will be provided to Corbin. Corbin will be able to comment on it. His comments will then be incorporated, and we will distribute that to the HPC. I would expect in a few weeks. So it's a new application, it's a new instruction sheet, and more user-friendly than what we've had before. Jim or Corbin, did you want to add?
I will be out of town from Wednesday of next week till the 5th of October, so probably wouldn't get to do it till after I get back.
Maybe we still have a workable chance, though, for the October meeting to get it out before that. I
If
mean,
you get it to me, I'll read over it if anything hits me glaringly. But
well, I think based on what Warren said today, the turnaround's going to be fairly quick for you to get it, and
There aren't that
you
many
know,
changes.
excuse me.
There aren't that many changes, are there?
Well, overall, Tom, considering all the comments that came in, there were what I'd call substantial changes.
Okay.
So you know, thank you for your input and everybody else who did. Some people a little more timely than others, but nonetheless, we're going to try to take everything all. Well, Janice actually wins the prize, but we're not going to hold her to that. We're going to consider everybody's comments, and hopefully the turnaround with Warren and Janet helping as being a new keeper of masters on this, we'll be able to do it within a week or so to get that out, and you guys will have it before the next meeting.
Terrific, thanks. HPC design standards, the update grant. Pip, could you just?
So the four of us met that are on the subcommittee, and we drew up the RFQ, and that was distributed to everybody for comments, and we distributed it to the whole committee. And Judy sent it out on Thursday, right? Yeah, Thursday, to the people in the city who have to comment. So we asked for them to comment ASAP. Do we have any comments? No. So, and at September 23rd at the latest. So hopefully people who want to comment will comment. And then once they comment and their comments are incorporated, then it has to go to the state for the final approval, although we sent it to the state at this same time. And once that's done, then it's going to be submitted. We'll send it out to people that we invited or that we want to invite to be pre-qualified. It will be posted on the city's website. It has to be up for 30 days. And then they'll send it back, and then the little committee will look over it, maybe the big committee too, and say who we want to pre-qualify. And at the same time, we will send out the RFP, which is also being written by the same four people who wrote the RFQ. And we have a meeting, I think, next week or something.
Who's your committee?
The big committee or the
Your
little committee?
four-person committee.
That's probably the
It
big
is
committee.
Me and John and Lorraine and B.
Want to add anything? No? Terrific. LED lighting. you have some pictures that
That's what those were for.
they were put together. The LED lighting is, in my estimation, not appropriate in Cape May. It's really very contemporary, it's very bright. Of course, we want to light stairs and things like that, but in a more traditional fashion. So I think we should go forward with maybe an addendum to, or the standards, or add to the standards in the interim, not accept them in the historic district and/or on historic properties outside the district. Does anyone disagree with that?
Going to say
Are-
all
Are we going to be the last people using the last incandescent bulb
So
in Cape May? I mean, there is something of a development in LED technology and the various colors and temperatures that does simulate better the
No, it's
incandescent lighting.
I've used them in my, inside of my own home, the soft white, they look the same as lights. Now, so maybe I misspoke.
Right, it's the color and temperature of the light.
It's this.
Yeah, this
Oh,
kind of color stuff. Yeah.
And this, right, and on these steps, that's, you know, you wouldn't use a regular light on steps like this. You would use a light on the railing system or on the post or something. So, yeah, your point's well taken. We should be more articulate, but,
Warren, I was going to say something that's probably controversial, but, you know, a lot of people in the public love the Abbey and the way it's lit, you know, but you got to, you know, it is beautiful, but are we getting close to Disney and to like a haunted mansion look? You know, and so you got to try to strike a balance with LED lighting.
or with lighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the LED so much as it's just lighting. Everything's getting lit up now. Everything's getting outlined.
Yeah.
A lot of buildings this summer got outlined.
Yeah, and of course, the reason you're seeing this increase is because the solar lighting is easy. You peel off the back and you stick it on and you're in business.
Yeah, excuse me,
As opposed to have
Warren,
wiring
if-
something with switches and stuff.
But in light of what Jim said, can we specify that they use a type of LED light that's more warm and specify those kind of products?
No, I think we can. In fact, now that we've talked about it, and since we have a new standards committee,
Put it into the standards.
if I can speak for Mr. Azor, since he was at my desk twice submitting these, he was concerned with the placement of the lights on the steps and the illumination, the light candles, I guess you'd call them, Jim. He said they're very, very bright.
yeah. Well,
And he objected to the color,
So,
the blue and red color
Can
also.
we ask your small committee for our next meeting, maybe just to put together a paragraph on this subject so we could gain understanding and acceptance?
I wanted to make one more comment regarding the red, white, and blue. I mean, that's in my neighborhood, and it was done for the 4th of July. So, and it's not there anymore.
Can't argue with patriotism.
So guys, I think what you're talking about is, in lighting, it's all about the temperature of the light. It's called degrees Kelvin. And what we begin to recognize as warm light that we would recognize as incandescent is about 2,500 degrees Kelvin. What you're mostly seeing in these is probably more like 4,000 to 5,000 degrees Kelvin, which is a very cool light.
It's a lot like taking LED automobile lights and turning them up bright
Exactly.
at 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with LED, because I would strongly support LED lighting, because it's a fraction of the energy use of any other type. But it's the color and type that I think we want to, and we'll put something together.
And also the location.
Yeah.
Location.
A wired light, not LED. This is not an appropriate application in the historic district. I mean, that's not the way,
And hopefully the people who will be thinking about redoing their lights will actually submit applications before they change their fixtures and light up their structures in different ways. I mean, I hope what we saw here tonight is not a widespread contagious thing, and one of the things that troubles me is that there seems to be some reliance on statements from city officials, other people who are employed in other places, or consultants or other departments, and that kind of cuts at cross purposes. The call's not made here, the reliance is argued as a reason not to comply. I think that's a dangerous trend if it's happening.
The instance that we heard, who knows what happened, but I would share with you in that particular instance, while that wall was being built, before it was finished, Bruce went out and asked them to stop. He didn't red tag it because they agreed to stop,
And they didn't.
but they didn't. So, and maybe, I mean, from a
Well,
city
and the
council
application,
base,
the application, I'm sorry.
maybe some kind of a comment at city council, not chastising anybody, but just reminding everybody that when they're talking to applicants, to be careful to include all the entities. Because it's easy, if you're representing one organization, it's pretty easy to react to that, situation without considering that.
And I can understand how the city engineer might say, well, that doesn't pose a problem because it doesn't involve violation of any setbacks, it conforms to thus and such and thus and such, but people take it as no problem, meaning no further work is needed. We'll say that from what you saw of the drafts and the expansion of instructions and applications, and what we tried to say to potential applicants, consult with us. You can talk and consult with a construction official, but whether or not you get to file or going to file an HPC application really depends on discussing the matter with the HPC to see if it falls within our jurisdiction, and if it does, submit the application.
Right, and I hope we all, when we're discussing with applicants about HPC issues, that we remind them that we're HPC, not zoning, not planning, which I think we go out of our way here to make that clear. But in our everyday conversation, we should be really clear.
Can I return to the approved application and the wall? At this point, an application has been approved for a brick wall with a limestone cap, as we did it. And so that's the approved application.
No, they have to return with all that in a presentation.
But even so, Tom, what happens with respect to the existing wall that's unapproved?
Well, if they just insist on doing absolutely nothing, the city could fine them.
Well, I mean, to me, that's where I wanted to lead.
I think what we voted for is different. Excuse me, but what I have here is, this is the application.
Right.
And because of our discussion, I wrote here, brick with limestone cap.
That's what was approved, and that was approved.
So that's what has to be done. So Bruce, as the compliance officer, is.
Well, but Tom was also clear that we need to see where the location of it actually is. There's nothing on the plan.
The second wall is not there.
The second one is
Second wall
not there.
Much further out.
But I guess what I'm saying is the very fact that it is not brick and not limestone capped means that they are in violation of an approved application. So to me, if for some reasonable period of time, they should be hit with enforcement. Because we have an application, it's very clear what they're supposed to do, they're not doing it.
I'll talk,
See it that way.
Well, that's just too bad.
yeah, I'll talk to Bruce and make sure the communication is clear. So,
I don't think that's fair. I really do. I think here's this woman, whatever she's done wrong, dumb like a fox, whatever's going on, I don't know. But she doesn't know that because you wrote that on that application, that now makes her in violation. What she knows is what we told her, that the walls should be brick, and that she either needs to do that or file an appeal to the zoning board.
Well, she has nothing.
You can't
reason-
appeal from an approved
The
application.
reason that I did
My
this,
point, that's my point.
Pip, the reason I did this is because she has nothing to appeal.
She's
That's
either-
why I wrote
I'll
this.
answer she's not.
I talked to her and said brick with limestone cap.
Well-
Now she has something to appeal.
She also has other recourse, and I think it's likely what she'll do, at least she said so. She could just remove the wall altogether,
Right.
right?
So anyway, that's why I did it. It's not, if she goes to zoning, what is she going to appeal?
Well, I just want to go on record as saying I think that's a little devious, but that's all.
But we've been,
We don't have to argue about it anymore.
But I mean, you already did. I mean, we've had this happen to us at least twice by the same person within a short period of time. I don't know about you, but that sure makes me angry.
But in fact, we're being helpful, because now she in fact can take that and go to zoning and appeal. So the intent was to be helpful, which,
Oh, all right. So she's able to go to zoning and appeal?
Yeah.
Even though it says brick?
that's what
She
she,
can go to zoning and appeal that?
right, that's what she's going to appeal.
Okay, all right.
I presume, I don't.
I don't know how you can appeal an approved application.
Actually, this should never have come before us without getting materials on it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it only came before us because compliance officer went out and told them to submit an application.
So, changing back to what we're talking about, this lighting and having the present Design Standards Committee write up a paragraph about lighting. So that lighting paragraph should both address the use of LEDs and the location.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
I think it's type, color, location, fixture, appropriateness, yeah.
And then finally, for me anyway, HPC training session. Remember, we were going to have a training session, talking about a bunch of issues. One of the things,
Is this house, you could put this house right in there.
that's right, so, the other, but more importantly, and it's fine, we can run with what we have. We have a few pictures. This is in the context, I'll remind you, of projects that were done, that we in fact approved, that in retrospect, we think maybe we could learn something from a mistake. Also, we could learn something from something that we did well. And so I went out and photoed 4 properties, I think, good and bad. And if you can search, this is things that came before us and we approved. So if you can think of something in your past experience here that you thought we approved, that looked pretty good, but in retrospect, maybe we could tighten up a little bit, if you get a picture to Judy, and we'll make it part of our training. And just the other way around also, something that you're particularly positive about. It would be really helpful. And then at the end of one of our meetings, or maybe an hour before one of our meetings, we could just group together informally in a training session and go over those and discuss them.
Are you proposing that for the October meeting? Are you proposing that for the October meeting?
Well, I started this about 6 months ago.
Then let's propose it for the October meeting.
So maybe the November,
Oh, okay.
so the November meeting. So Judy, if you would put that in bold caps, November training session. So, geez, that's what-
Don't forget my section here. They're starting to pack up on me. The awards.
okay.
Okay.
Take
Just
it away.
because I am putting this in the folder does not mean I am leaving you.
All right, all right. Well, Janice and I have been a two-person committee. Of course, now that I found out she doesn't get things done very fast, I might have to add somebody else to it. But we,
You make the bed, you have to lie on it.
Well,
We went
Pip,
back-
I got back to Pip immediately, and then I'm like, oh my God, the application.
we went back and looked at what we did in 2005, which actually kind of got stretched over about a 2-year period of time. And we even announced that we would give these awards every year. So here we now are in 2022, and we haven't had a repeat of this. So I think the one thing we particularly decided is we've really got to make this a whole lot easier. When we did it back then, we reprinted 1,000 copies of an application. You could an application for an award. You could do one for yourself. You could do one for somebody else that you like. Anybody could submit one. It required pictures of all 4 sides of the building and all kinds of things associated with it. And then we had to find 5 qualified judges to look at all these different applications and make their recommendations for who to give the awards. Then we also had the cost of the plaques, which, was rather expensive, and that limited how many awards that we gave out. So in talking, Janice and I decided we really want to give people who've done a good job recognition. And we've decided that one way we could do this is not ask everybody in town to submit applications to us, but all of us from the past 10-year period, which we're kind of looking at as the time period, could look back at what we've approved, what they've done, go through the minutes, the applications, and just look at the finished product. And all of us could maybe come up with some really nice projects that both reflect preservation, good landscaping, and things that just really make the town the kind of town that we want. It has to keep that nice historic feel to it. And then we're going to work on maybe a time that we could give the awards. But I'm going to ask Janice to tell you a little bit about a new idea on giving an award.
Well, I looked at the rather cumbersome project that had happened, and it really almost mimicked our application project for doing a project. In other words, we were making it up to the people to apply and then be judged, and there was a whole committee and a big party, and it was just another big project. And it seemed a little stuffy, cumbersome, and very particular, like only a few people got it. And what we want is we want to be cheerleaders. We want the people who do the right thing to get a lot of love and praise. And we'd like it to be as simple as possible. And I think about, when I go walking and I see these little signs that say it's a pollinator garden, or, it's putting some love about, a passive solar or something. These signs, banners, just visual things that are well-designed. So I was thinking something like a banner or a flag that we could have produced, maybe not mass-produced. I talked to Sue Latozo, and, to have it done locally, to have it be cool, to have it be something that somebody would want on their porch or in their garden, but also so that people who walk by would notice, here's an authentic house, and it's been recognized in a positive way by the HPC, by the city. So Tom asked me to get a budget, and it's a little more complicated to make something like that than I had thought. Another thing that came up was the idea of going through all the minutes for 10 years. That sounds like a lot of work. But if we all know when we see something good. And I think one thing that I noticed on Congress Street, there's a cute little cottage that did a really good job in most ways, but they have casement windows, and I'm pretty sure they weren't approved. So I'm thinking ahead and thinking, we would have to bird dog the awards to make sure we don't give an award to a project that really looks great, but they did one thing we didn't approve. And that's kind of, you know, a nuisance, but it is what it is, right?
So are you proposing that maybe we could all make nominations to the award committee, and the award committee would bird dog them, as you said,
Right.
and bring before all of us, yeah, we think that these 7, 8, 12, 50 projects deserve recognition?
And the more the better, because if you start seeing positive and well-designed flags or something like that, and people want them, because at an event where a few people get an award, there's probably going to be people who wish they had gotten it or think they should have gotten it. And it happens, and then it's over, and they have the little thing in their living room or something. And you want it outside.
So are you guys saying these were really expensive? These ceramic ones?
Yeah.
Because they're beautiful.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
This was from 2007. Lorraine had it.
nice.
Yeah.
Just keeps it on her phone, or?
Okay.
So in other
But
words,
it-
a recognized project
Lorraine,
located
is it
on the.
outside? Is it?
It is outside.
Oh,
Presented
okay,
on the porch. It's beautiful.
okay.
And we
I went
presented
by
it,
And they're very proud of this.
yeah,
That's
and we
nice.
presented it here, so
Okay.
that people came in, but I'm a little hesitant to go back like 10 years or something.
Well, I mean, the point is, if you want to avoid having another 20-year cycle, it might be an idea to look at a 5 or 4 year, I mean, and some of us, who knows how long our terms will be, but some of us haven't been around on the commission for 10, 15, 20 years.
Been in Cape May, and
Well, I understand that, but not smart enough not tuned into where we are. I would suggest a shorter period of going back. I mean,
Yeah, I would
happy.
too.
I mean, that's a reasonable period of time.
5 years is a good amount.
And maybe there's exceptions, but I think we've seen a lot of stuff.
I still think everybody could be able to, quote, nominate houses without reading minutes or whatever. just because
No one's going to read the
Right.
minutes.
Right?
Sure.
I mean, you would know, or maybe you wouldn't know. I just assumed you would know houses that were good.
But I'd like it to be coming from our members and maybe a few other key people that we know that
Yeah.
we're sensitive to what we're doing.
Right.
that
Yeah,
we
this
suggest.
is great. You're thereby obviating the whole application process. There is no application process, right? Yeah, this is great.
Yeah.
For this award,
Right.
No,
and
it
I
would be
forget-
more like the little fairy godmother coming along.
I forget how much that cost. Janice, do you remember? Do you know how much that cost?
I wasn't involved on that.
No, I
is it
know.
it's a
I-
fired ceramic or
It was intended,
metallic?
That
Yeah,
woman
it's-
would
Enameled.
be able to say.
Yeah,
That
looks
was
like it's
intended to
glazed,
be one-
white and blue.
a year.
Oh,
No,
one
well, we
particular,
used those before it was one a year. In the way beginning, we had to make those plaques.
No, I was on the
You
commission.
weren't on in the
Yeah, I
first
was.
part when we did it.
I was on there when that whole thing was
You
discussed.
might have been on with that, but you weren't on in the beginning of the original plaques and stuff that we did.
I don't know about that
Yeah,
plaque.
that's my point.
That plaque was developed probably only about 12 years ago or something. And as I recall, it was intended, not as I recall, it was one a year, it was presented here, and it cost a couple $100, I think.
So you're saying we gave out plaques since
We
the
did.
2005,
That was 2007.
2007, yeah,
What's a couple years,
a
Tom?
couple of years. Still 15 plus years ago, so.
Yeah.
Right, it's still 15 years.
So well, I think the thing, Janice, I really want to know, you kind of like this keep it simple, stupid idea and kind of work with us. And if all of you could just start maybe, and you're walking around the town, just say, that's one. And maybe submit the names, the house numbers to me, and I'll share them with Janice, and we'll start taking a look and start seeing how many we're getting. You know, I think we could probably pick up maybe 40, 50 properties that we'd like to say, you really did a good job.
That'd be
Yeah.
awesome.
Uh-huh.
That'd be really great.
Yeah. And, you know, they could be privately owned, they can be commercial, they can be a Harriet Tubman museum. You know, there's
Right.
just many, many ways that we can salute people who've done a good job.
It'd be
with it-
nice to have
without-
a before and after.
Uh-huh.
Do you think we could probably get before and after photos?
We could probably appeal to the people we want to give it to. Do you have a before?
Yeah, because I'm thinking of
Uh-huh.
the commercial property
Yeah,
right across from Finn's, that,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, that's
uh-huh.
gorgeous.
That Jeff did.
It sat there like nothing for so many
We
Yeah,
have
years.
we have some before pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Particularly if
yeah.
the before pictures are really,
If we make it too burdensome,
Yeah.
then
I won't get
we'll
done.
get off to a big start, and then it won't get done.
Well, you know, I'm actually thinking of it before and after just for publicity later. It shouldn't get in the way.
Also, we have to figure out what the plaque is going to be and what the cost is. I don't even know whether that person's still available to do.
She is. I was told that she was. I'm going to actually look into it.
Oh, that'd be great.
Yeah.
You mean the creator of the plaque?
The creator of the plaque. I'll look into that.
Is she the person in West Cape May? I forget her name.
Susan Ross.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, yeah.
She's married to Milt Edelman, who's a local contractor.
So if you find out
Well,
that they're
there's other,
$200,
I mean,
and you
there's
have 40 of
row
them.
house tile, there's something
Well, Janice-
fabric, you know, there's other
Janice was going to really try to get something going on with maybe a little flag design. So before we start really worrying about what we're going to give them, let's start coming up with how many we think we might have. And is it a nice assortment that salutes all the kind of things that we're looking for that would be great for publicity? And remind the community that, you know, we are hardworking people. Bob Moick's been doing not Bob Moick, Zach Moick's been doing a fabulous job praising us members of the boards, you know, as the ones that are going to save the town from you know what. And, you know, we're really in the news, so I think I'm kind of playing on that to say, yeah, we don't just deal with things like that, we deal with all the small things that happen in the town too, that collectively make people walk down our streets and say, wow, this is for real. I didn't believe it could be so nice.
Tom, we'd probably
I
have
run into
to,
them all the time.
we'd probably have to confirm that we have records that they went through HPC and got a resolution and a certificate of appropriateness if we're going to give an award. I mean, we can't give awards without making sure that they came before the review board and got a COA. So we'd have to look through once you go through whatever process.
Nominees would be vetted against HPC records to see that they actually had a project.
I mean, I'm thinking of some people who's doing just fantastic gardens that I think ought to get something like
Fine.
this. Because that's another.
Then don't, I mean, it's just
Beauty.
I think what's been suggested is,
well-maintained, I
Yeah,
mean, right up the street
it's,
from me, there's
what's just been suggested, though, is it's kind of strange for the HPC to give an award for something that didn't involve the HPC.
Yeah, that would be-
That's the point I think Judy was making.
I couldn't support that. And maintaining, it doesn't have to be addressed either, because by definition, if it's not maintained, it's not going to get
Right.
recognized.
Okay. So HPC approved.
You just cross-check it. I mean, the nominations can be cross-checked against our records to see that we've actually approved something.
And
Remember, I'm trying to keep it simple,
Well, that's a little too
or
simple.
I'll never get it done.
And I would encourage, I don't know about 40 or 50, because remember, we have to get something made and
Yeah.
presented, and it has to be something that people would actually be proud to show, and 40 of them could be expensive.
So, but I think on the other hand, I mean, you're thinking about, are you gonna go for critical mass, right? A whole bunch of people, you know, we're doing things that cover 15 years, whatever, and you get a critical mass of people, or if you just give one or two, or three or four, then nobody ever knows about it, and it's not enough
That's why.
mass.
That's why I'd like to see a lot of people get.
Well, it has to be visible for people to see, which means it suggests of more than just a couple. But also, we can be helped by the media there should be enough publicity on our awards that someone covers it and it gets known that way. I just like to toss something in, and it really doesn't relate to the ongoing project, at least it doesn't yet. I think it would be appropriate, perhaps not in these awards, but for us to think in the future of having some kind of recognition of our colleague Dave Clemens, who passed away and who we lauded here and who we all sat with for quite some time. And I'm not sure what that would be, but I think the HPC ought to have something based on his service and recognizing him as a leader in preservation in the city. I just toss it out. I know you can't call it, these awards, the Dave Clemens Recognition Award, but keep that in your mind, that it would be nice to have, at least in my view, something appropriate to recognize Dave.
There's an awful lot of people, though, that like that. I mean, Mary Ann Gaffney, Skip Laughlin.
I get it, but
We've had a lot of them over time that just gave all they had to this thing.
I appreciate that, but sometimes it's more than worth just a nod. Some people, for example, establish scholarships and funds and grants and things like that to serve as a memory.
Oh, it's getting out of hand, Janice.
Well, I didn't mean this to be part of your awards, Tom, but it seemed to me appropriate to mention it at this time.
We quit.
One of my thoughts when I spent a minute and wrote a note for tonight was particular or peculiar to Dave, because he really shunned recognition. He wouldn't have shown up if we were to give him an award while he was still alive. He wouldn't have shown up. I mean, he was a very modest person that way, so that's why I elected to do something. But to your point is well taken. But that's why I did what I did. 'Cause
I mean, and other people in the community might feel that there was appropriate, that there be some sort of fund to be used, for example, to further studies or purposes or seminars or something that we'd establish a fund, a modest fund, but it would still be in his honor, in recognizing him. I just throw it out for thought for the future.
Well, it's a good thought, and I would share with you, there's going to be a celebration of Dave's life at the end of October.
It's October 29th, do I?
Saturday of October.
I think it's the
October.
29th.
4 to 5:30 at the yacht club.
Yeah.
And so
And it's really open. It's,
Oh, well,
could all meet.
I've seen it.
So we maybe wordsmith this a little bit and present it there or something.
So how about before the October meeting, everybody give me 3, 4, or 5 names of properties you think. I'm aware of that has happened recently. I remember reviewing it, and that's one that I would consider. And then I'll kind of put together like leading candidates there and see, how many we're coming up with. And
New
then
construction
we'd
too,
talk-
or just old or new too?
New too.
Okay.
I think there's some new houses. Some of these houses going up and, kind of in a Craftsman and Mission style are, really outstanding. And
Well, that's
yeah,
why
we should
I'm
keep
just
them in mind too.
Saying, what are the criteria here?
And we approved them,
Yeah.
That's my report.
Okay.
We're moving on, right? Okay.
Anything else to come before this group?
We adjourn.
Tomorrow night, the presentation, isn't that tomorrow night?
No.
Yeah,
Nancy Serby or?
Nancy Zerby
yeah.
at City Council is tomorrow night. That's it. What
That's
else
clear.
we got?
I move we adjourn.
I second.
Aye.
Yes. Go Eagles. 8:30 they started.